Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Mudirayen Nashta Prayeshva Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishukhi. Reading from Canto 3, Chapter 31, The Movements of the Living Entity, Text 48. Please repeat after me. Samyak Darshanaya Buddhyam Samyak Darshanaya Buddhyam Samyak Darshanaya Buddhyam Yoga Vairagyam Yuktayam Yoga Vairagya Yuktayam Yoga Vairagya Yuktayam Maya Virachite Loke Maya Virachite Loke Maya Virachite Loke Charen Nyasya Kalevaram Charen Nasya Kalevaram Charen Nasya Kalevaram Charen Nasya Kalevaram Samyak Darshanaya Buddhyam Yoga Vairagya Yuktaya Maya Virachite Loke Charenyasya Kalevaram Samyak Darshanaya Buddhyam Yoga Vairagya Yuktaya Maya Virachite Loke Charenyasya Kalevaram Samyak Darshanaya Buddhya Yoga Vairagya Yuktaya Maya Virachite Loke Charenyasya Kalevaram Samyak Darshanaya Buddhya Yoga Vairagya Yuktaya Maya Virachite Loke Charenyasya Kalevaram Samyak Darshanaya Buddhya Yoga Vairagya Yuktaya Maya Virachite Loke Charenyasya Kalevaram Samyak Darshanaya endowed with right vision Buddhya through reason Yoga by devotional service Vairagya by detachment Yuktaya strengthened Maya Virachite arranged by Maya Loke to this world charade one should move about Nyasya relegating Kalevaram, the body. Translation and purport by Jivangra Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Endowed with right vision and strengthened by devotional service and a pessimistic attitude towards material identity, one should relegate his body to this illusory world through his reason. Thus, one can be unconcerned with this material world. Please repeat after me. Endowed with right vision and strengthened by devotional service and a pessimistic attitude towards material identity, one should relegate his body to this illusory world through his reason. Thus, one can be unconcerned with this material world. Purport. It is sometimes misunderstood that if one has to associate with persons engaged in devotional service, he will not be able to solve the economic problem. To answer this argument, it is described here that one has to associate with liberated persons not directly, physically, but by understanding through philosophy and logic the problems of life. It is stated here, Samya Darshanaya Bhudya. One has to see perfectly, and by intelligence and yogic practice, one has to renounce this world. That renunciation can be achieved by the process recommended in the second chapter of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. The devotee's intelligence is always in touch with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. His attitude towards the material existence is one of detachment, for he knows perfectly well that this material world is a creation of illusory energy. Realizing himself to be part and parcel of the Super Soul, the devotee discharges his devotional service and is completely aloof from material action and reaction. Thus, at the end, he gives up his material body or the material energy, and as a pure soul, he enters the kingdom of God. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports of third canto, 31st chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Lord Kapila's Instructions on the Movements of the Living Entities. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshurunmilitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kalamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Udapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Shri Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sakrajadam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitam Scha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimade Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Prashadine Nivishesha Sunyavadi Parshatya Desha Dharine Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyasha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gauratise Namaha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sude Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I was born in the darkness of ignorance. My spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Mukam karoti vatsalam, bhango langayate girim, yat kripatamaham vande, Shri Guru, Shri Dinatarinam. Tavai vasmi, na jivami thavai vina, iti vigya devitvam, nayamam charanantikam. Hare Krishna. Welcome to this morning's Bhagavatam class, the Movement of the Living Entities, instructions by Kapila Dev. Text 48 is the concluding verse of this chapter, the Movements of Living Entities. It's not an easy chapter. It's one of the hard ones to go through. It's quite confronting chapter. But at least the last verse is quite calming down. It's moderated, the last one. So at least in conclusion, we can take a breath. Hare Krishna, come in. Yeah, come. Just you can go through the darshan. At least you're properly dressed. Not like the previous set of people. Go ahead. Go to the front and have some Charanamrita. Yes, so if you want to summarize this chapter, we can see how Kapila Dev describes how the living entity is conceived in the material world when it takes birth. Kapila Dev explains what happens on the first day of consumption, the second day of consumption, then he goes and describes the fifth day, the 10th day, the first month, second month, third month, fifth month, and eventually when the child is ready to take birth. And he goes on in detail how these different phases are very, very uncomfortable for the living entities to be stuck in this position in the mother's womb. And out of desperation and pain, some living entities who have the mercy of the Lord, they tend to pray. They tend to understand their condition, their precarious condition where they are stuck. They pray to the Supreme Lord, and eventually they get pushed out by various airs moving into the mother's body. The child is pushed out and falls on the ground, and then out of the pain, generally women who have given birth, they can vouch how difficult is it to give birth, because they can explain. But the child, who is much more, the body is much more fragile, very soft, very fragile, and he can't even explain, he or she can't even explain the pain and the agony they're going through. And they're pushed out into this material world, into this strange environment, with people throwing lights at their faces. The first time they're born, this huge light, the surgery room. If you're So if you're chanting in the dark outside and then you walk into the temple in a bright light, it shocks you and it hurts your eyes. Imagine you're in the dark room for 9 months with your eyes closed and then you're pushed out with this bright light everywhere. It's quite confronting, very painful. And all the strange people staring at you. It's quite confronting, confronting. And because out of this pain, the living entity cries. The baby screams out of pain. And then due to various association, the comfort of the parents and the family, the living entity forgets, and thanks to the illusory energy, the living entity forgets the pain it endured, and it starts leading a so-called normal life, where it considers the circumstances it's born in as normal, and starts associating more and more with material energy. And Kabiradev goes on explaining the root cause of attachment. Gets attached to various objects, and the root cause of attachment is the opposite sex. And he goes on describing how the living entity, at least born in a male body, becomes a dancing dog in the lap of a woman. He says, dancing dog in the lap of a woman. And then he says, because of the attachment to the opposite sex, especially women, he ends up taking birth as a woman in the next life. And then, as in the woman's body, how the living entity is, what is the analogy he gives? He says how a deer is fooled by the hunter, by his playing music, by the flute, what the hunter uses. So similarly, women, they get fooled by the men, and then they get attached, and eventually, Kabiradev says they both go to hell, both men and women, and then they repeat this process again and again. And then eventually, So he describes that till text 47, but at 48, he gives in the form of a sutra in a very concise way. He says how to get out, how to protect yourself from the description of last 47 verses. Samyak darshanaya buddhya, endowed with a right vision, endowed with the right vision through reasoning and by devotional service. One practices detachment, and he strengthens it by yukta, and understands this material world is temporary or illusion, and navigates through this material world based on these attachments. And by doing so, Prabhupada concludes that by following in these footsteps or in this pattern, he gives up this material body and goes back to the spiritual world. This particular verse is already in a very concise, consolidated fashion, where Kapila encompasses all the important ingredients of devotional service. Prabhupada even takes even further, simplifies it. He says, what does he say usually? He says, simple living and high thinking. Simple living and high thinking. And that's a kind of essence of this verse. This verse is already essence. And Prabhupada even simplifies it just by saying, simple living and high thinking. Simple living is living with detachment, with the right knowledge, and right knowledge and understanding of the spiritual world. That's a high thinking. So he gives that, or simplifies this verse even further. So let's dive into this verse and see what Prahlad explains. There's three pramanas. Shastra prescribes three pramanas. Three. So can anybody say what are the three pramanas? Sorry, what? No. The three pramanas. Not it's the Vedas use this as a way to understand knowledge, to acquire knowledge. Thank you. First is Pratyaksha. The next one is Anumana and Shabda. These three are the mechanisms through which a living entity acquires the right knowledge, spiritual knowledge. Of course, and then Prabhupada repeatedly says this, of course the Pratyaksha element is faulty, but it is still a method, but it is faulty. It is still a prescribed method, but there is some faults in it. And further than Pratyaksha is Anumana, or reasoning, logical reasoning. So Kabir here talks about that logical reasoning. Buddhya, through reason. And Prabhupada purport, no, it's in the word by word translation. Buddhya, through reasoning. That's Anumana, the next one, through logical reasoning. We will dive into it. And then the last one is Shabda. Shabda is foolproof. Pratyaksha and Anumana could have faults, but Shabda, when heard from the right source, that's a caveat. It has to be heard, Shabda, from the right source, the sound, then it becomes foolproof. So these are the three mechanisms through which one acquires knowledge. The first one is Pratyaksha. Pratyaksha means through sight. We see. It says, Pratyaksha means through sight, but it can be understood as through sense perception, not just limited to sight. Pratyaksha, you can expand it through various senses. We acquire knowledge through various senses. Through eyes we see and we understand certain things. We see, and then we see that we see light, and we understand there is sun outside, or we can see the sun and we say our sun has risen. So that's Pratyaksha. There's you smell something nice or something bad, then we can know there's incense or there's something filthy. So you acquire that knowledge. Or there's a room nice and fragrant, so you can go and there's nice fragrance. So you acquire knowledge through that. Or if there's bad smell, or you're saying, oh no, I don't want to go in there. So that's Pratyaksha. It gives you, through the senses, you acquire knowledge. This Pratyaksha knowledge is okay in certain levels, but when it comes to topics which are very important, to depend on Pratyaksha is a bit risky business. It's a bit risky business because our senses can be, we can't trust our senses. The senses are inherently faulty. So the information you gain through the faulty senses could also be faulty. For example, you may see, I'm just thinking how you go outside, you see there is no light, so you might think there is no sun. There's no light, so you see there's no light. You might think there is no sun, but that could be because of either the sun is covered by a dark cloud, or there could be eclipse. It doesn't mean the sun is not there. Does that make sense? So the information given to us by the eyes is incorrect. It says dark, then dark means no sun, so that information is incorrect because you can't see the sun, you can't conclude there is no sun. So the perception is faulty. Do that make sense? So say if you have a fever, if you have a fever, you feel cold. So your sense of touch is giving you wrong information. It's not cold outside, it's just your sense is corrupted. It's feeling cold because you're feeling because you have flu or something. So the information given by sense of touch is incorrect in this condition. So when it comes to, so you can see how pratyaksha could be faulty. The scientist community, they believe they base a lot of their stress on pratyaksha. You have to prove, you have to show me. You have to show me. Where is God? Show me God. Otherwise I won't believe. They put a lot of emphasis on pratyaksha. Yeah. But problem with pratyaksha, as I explained, may not be accurate. So better than pratyaksha is anuman. Anuman means a logical inference. This logical inference is better. Even for the next one, shabda, sound, when you listen to the sound and if you want to realize it or if you want to objectify it, then this anuman helps. So it's a better way of acquiring knowledge. And in this verse, Kapil Dev focuses on anuman, the reasoning. Reasoning can be also faulty. The examples given, let's see a few examples. Like Krishna's pastime, when Krishna was a child in the Damodar Leela pastime. Krishna wanted milk, Mother Yashoda was churning butter, and Krishna wanted milk. So, Mother Yashoda started feeding him milk. Krishna was very happy. Whenever he's getting fed by Mother Yashoda, Krishna becomes very happy. So he's comfortably getting fed by Mother Yashoda in her lap. And then Mother Yashoda notices the milk boiling over, which is meant for Krishna. And she goes through a whole process of collecting that milk. Maybe that's a whole class by itself, how the hard effort she puts in to get that particular kind of milk. And that's a milk she's boiling to feed to the same guy who's in the lap, to Krishna. So when she sees the milk is boiling over, what Mother Yashoda does, through logic and reasoning, through Anuman, he concludes that the milk is boiling over, that milk is to nourish Krishna. So if I don't save the milk, I can't nourish Krishna. By not nourishing Krishna, he'll be hungry or he'll be unhappy. So that's a logical inference. Does that make sense? She logically concludes that. So she puts baby Krishna on the floor and she goes and saves the milk. But what happens? What's the pastime? She thinks Krishna will be protected or happy by saving the milk. But what happens in the pastime? Anybody? You guys all heard Damodar pastime before? Krishna gets really unhappy. She gets so angry that his cheeks are trembling. He's that unhappy. And he's so unhappy that he goes and breaks all the other part of milk and yogurt that Mother Yashoda has saved for him. So you can see the reasoning didn't work here. Her logical reasoning is not working. She is thinking This is Krishna's service. This is for Krishna. I have to go and save this milk for Krishna. But Krishna has a whole different understanding. He's upset, he's completely angry. The opposite result. The opposite result. So sometimes, in a very subtler aspects, our logic and reasoning might not be accurate, might not be right. Of course, it's a pastime to increase the bliss of Mother Yashoda, to increase the pleasure of Krishna's associates. But to give an example how Anumana cannot be accurate. And of course, in the same pastime, she sees Krishna's footprints around the broken pots. So Mother Yashoda, through logic, through Anumana, she understands that Krishna broke the pot. She understood who is the culprit even though she hasn't seen it. So it works, but at the same time it does have its faults. The method of acquiring knowledge through Anumana. And of course, the third one is Shabda or Shruti, by hearing from authoritative sources, by hearing through the authoritative sources. That has no fault, because that's tried and tested, and it comes through disciplic succession. And it's not something what a person makes it up and then relates to the next person. No, it comes through the succession. Somebody heard it from an authoritative source, and then they relate it to somebody next, and then they are related to somebody next. So the information is passed through authoritative disciplic succession. So that knowledge received through authoritative source is perfect. But this authoritative source, you heard it, but if you want to realize it, of course, if you hear it from authoritative source, naturally, it's perfect, and you should accept it. But of course, people want to realize it. People want to understand it for their own, how it works. And for that, Pratyaksha and Anumana helps. So here, Kapila Dev explains from the very beginning of his instructions. He starts explaining by the Sankhya philosophy. He explains the Sankhya philosophy. He gives an elaborate description of the 24 elements, and then how the soul is different from that 24 elements. So he gives these descriptions in detail, and these details help the Anumana. By understanding, having this knowledge, one can logically infer or understand or logically infer that the living entity is different from what? Different from the 24 elements, different from matter. So the biggest problem what the living entity has is identifying oneself with the matter. And if you identified oneself with the matter, then there is no concept of detachment. Because how can you be detached from, if you think you are this body, how can you be detached from it? Then what am I going to become? But if you understand, I am not this body, I'm a spirit soul, it's a different entity, and the body is a different entity, then you can develop detachment, the buddhi, the detachment that can be developed. But if you think this shirt is me, and if somebody pours ink on this shirt, it doesn't happen here anymore, but when you were children, you wear a white shirt to the school, I mean, the kids throw ink at you, watch it, as a prank. But if you think I'm the shirt, then naturally you'll get very upset. Because this is me. But if you know that this shirt is just a covering, and if I take the shirt to the laundry, it can be washed, and the next day it'll be okay, you don't need to get too upset. You're annoyed, but you're not too upset. So you can grow the detachment. You can cultivate the detachment based on knowledge through inference. So the inference or the reasoning helps one to understand the detachment. So our process doesn't stop there. It doesn't just stop with anumana. We are not just renunciates for the sake of renunciate. It goes further, and then the word used is yoga. Yoga means devotional service in this concept, in this context, not yogurt. Yoga. So here, yoga means devotional service. So based on the detachment we have developed by understanding through inference, the living entity is different from the material objects it is surrounded by when one performs devotional service. That is acting in detachment in devotional service. Okay? And devotional service is, again, why one has to perform devotional service. Again, going back to inference and going back to anumana and also to shabda. Because we have heard from authoritative sources, then we have also used by logic, we have understood that the living entities, the role of a living entity is to perform devotional service. Let's have a quick look how that works, how anumana comes in there. So we look at living entities. Every living entity is serving somebody else. All right? That's pratyaksha. You see that. Everybody is serving somebody else. Doesn't matter how top of the ladder food chain the person is or how bottom of the food chain the person is. We are all serving somebody. Okay, pratyaksha. But with a little bit of knowledge, with a little bit of anumana, when we can see that these service is temporary. One understands, okay, I'm a servant. That's what I do. Okay? But then through logic, you can understand this service is temporary because the object which receives this service could cease to exist. Does that make sense? The object which I'm trying to serve could cease to exist at one point. So my nature of service is interrupted. Say you have a new iPhone. What version are we in? I don't use iPhone. 15, okay, we have 15. And we are serving the iPhone. I don't know if the iPhone is serving you or not, but you're definitely serving the iPhone. So you can see, you're always looking after it, charging it, reading what it got to offer. You're serving the iPhone. But after some time, that iPhone will cease to exist. It's not going to be there forever. Right or wrong? And it'll die. Okay? So you have through pratyaksha understood that you are a servant, but then through anumana you can infer that this iPhone, even though it's brand new in my hand today, will die in few years' time. So my service attitude, my role of a servant is disrupted. So an intelligent person will ask, through anumana again, what is the right object of my service? Okay. Of course, anumana can answer that. For that, you have to go to the next praman, which is shabda. through the knowledge given by the scriptures, we can understand that Krishna is the object of our service. Why? Because that's our natural constitution. And not only that, the service to Krishna will never cease to exist. Why? Why would it not cease to exist? Come on, this is a class about Anumana, so we need to have a bit of a logical inference. We have to use that part of our brain. Because Krishna is Avyayam. Krishna doesn't disappear. He is not lost in time. So our object of service ever exists. And we also, through the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, understand that we as a living entity also what? We are eternal. Avinashi tu tad vidiyena sarvamitam tatam vinasham avyayasya na kartum kaschit arhasi. We as living entities is imperishable. Achadyoyam akaledyoyam adayoyam evacha nitya sarvagatasthanu achalayam sanatanam. We are not changed. We don't change as living entity. So we are also existing, the Lord is also existing, Krishna is also existing. So through Hanuman, we can understand that we as a living entity who is eternal, who has the nature of being a servant, if we serve the object which never perishes, is the right thing to do. That's Hanuman reasoning. Does that make sense? So, and then based on that, we engage in yukta. It's an important word, yukta here, because we are not false renunciates, like the Mayavadis. We are not renunciates for the sake of renunciation. We renounce with knowledge. We don't say, this nice flower garlands, flowers, Mayavadis will think it's Maya. It's not, it's illusion. But we devotees have a different perception. Samya darshanaya, proper vision. Our vision is proper. So what do we see? This is beautiful garlands with nice fragrance. And Krishna likes garlands. So I will make the garland, use the flowers, make the garland, and offer it to Krishna. Engage in his service. Not in my service. I love garlands, by the way. So I don't go around asking Mataji's, make me a garland so I can wear around now. So when I give classes, I get the garland, I hold on to it because I like garlands. So it's reverence, engaging in using the objects properly, using the flowers properly in Krishna's service, and then relishing them in a proper mood. As a servant, I'm wearing Krishna's garland, which is bona fide. Okay. So through logical inference, and you use things properly. Detachment, the vairagya is used properly. Of course, one has to be careful. On the name of yukta and vairagya, we can't start exploiting the material energy. I'm Krishna's devotee, so I should have this. It's yukta vairagya Prabhu. You're driving in a fancy car, which I used to do. Oh, it's yukta vairagya. No, that's not yukta vairagya. That's just sense gratification. Yukta vairagya means seeing in relation to Krishna, based on the suitability suitability. The verse what Rupa Goswami uses is in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu in this context is Anvasaktasya Vishaya Yataham Upayujyate Nirbandhe Krishna Sambandhe Yukta Vairagya Uchati. So Anasakta Vishaya, Anasakta Vishaya, yes, Vishaya means object of objects of sense enjoyment. One has to be, the word Krishna uses, Vishaya Nivartante Nitya Sajahina. So objects. One has to be detached from the objects of senses. How? Yatharam upapadyate. Yatharam is an important word. Yatharam is a very important word in this particular verse because yatharam means suitability. We are not impersonal. Every person is an individual, and every individual have certain qualities. So this yukta vairagya and asakti, detachment, should be according to the suitability of that particular individual. And that suitability of the particular individual is defined by varnashram. Varnashram gives you that definition of what is that suitability. Okay. That's the importance of this word, yataram, suitability. Example, a sannyasi, he has certain qualities, expectations, rules, and he acts accordingly. And his detachment is different from the detachment of a grahastha. You can't expect a grahastha to be in the same detachment as a sannyasi. It's different with our suitability applicants. And similarly, a brahmachari has a different level of detachment or different level of accepting and rejecting compared to a sannyasi or compared to a grahastha. Even though a sannyasi and brahmachari, they are both detached, but their detachment is completely different. Completely different based on the individuality and the position they remain. And similarly, that can be extended both ways, like varna and ashrama, and men and women. So they all have a particular role, and by practicing that particular suitability, yatharam is very important. I'm stressing again and again because now the world has lost that suitability. Everybody wants to act in every fashion. So here Rupa Goswami emphasizes in this verse, yukta, and people, we quote this verse a lot, yukta vairagyam, but they don't emphasize the word yatharam. This yukta vairagya has to be coupled with yatharam. Without that, the yukta vairagya is you're just doing it whimsically. So here, cultivating that yukta vairagya, yoga vairagya yuktaya, based on your ashram, the body you are in a male body, female body, different age, where are you in, you act accordingly. And this is how, then he concludes, Kapil Dev concludes, this is how you navigate this world. Have the right vision and knowledge gained through inference and logic. Based on that, develop right detachment, not incorrect detachment. Right detachment, engage in devotional service, yoga, and based on these principles, navigate through this material world. So by doing that, Prabhupada concludes by saying, by doing that, by giving up the body, you will go back to Godhead. So, very scientific process. But if you take even one thing out of context and start doing whimsically, it doesn't work. Science means A plus B plus C is D. But if you just say A plus C equal to D, no, it doesn't work. Samyak darshanaya, right vision. Right vision, starting from the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. I'm not this body, I'm the spirit soul. Krishna is supreme, I'm servant of Krishna. And all these are understood through proper logic and reasoning, not some sentiment. Through proper logic and understanding, logical inference. And through that, perform devotion service and cultivate vairagya yuktaya, cultivate renunciation, detachment, suitable renunciation. And through this, you navigate through this world and you will be saved from the last 47 verses of misery, what we've been going through. So that's how Kapila concludes this very difficult chapter. Okay? I'll stop here. If you have any corrections, questions, suggestions.
Just referring to the translation, pessimistic attitude towards material identity, unconcerned with this material world. Is this more an internal thinking than being an extrovert?
So what? Yeah.
Is this being more like an internal process?
The whole thing is internal process. The internal, well, the internal, external, this is all modern words. What is internal will reflect external. There is no difference. If you internally think, I want to eat rasgulla, if a rasgulla comes, you will go and snatch it. So there's no, just because internal or external, it's just word play. Behavior reflects, so again I'll repeat myself. Buddhaya, through logic and reasoning, one has to examine where they are and act accordingly. Act means what? Practice the yoga, devotion service, develop detachment according to your situation. So one has to actively think through in their life and progress. You think internally and act externally. It's not like you think internally something and act externally something. That's you're cheating yourself. And those internal thinking and acting externally should be based on these principles. Right vision, right intelligence, right inference, right process, devotional service, right detachment based on your circumstances of an ashrama, and you navigate through the life. Does that make sense? I know you
what we actually think inside, we don't necessarily exhibit outside. Like for example, being a renunciant, that's something which is like internal rather than showing off. Like, I don't dress like a sannyasi or anything with clothes or anything because we're in a society, right? So that's more like an internal thing. That's what
He's completely got it wrong there. I'm sorry. You completely got it wrong there. I don't know if you heard my class. It's suitable renunciation. Internal, external, it's not like you're acting as a sannyasi inside and externally you're acting as a grahastha. That's not going to work. Then how are you going to deal with your wife and children? Then you're cheating them and you're cheating yourself. That's not. Every stage has a right renunciation. There's a renunciation of a brahmachari, there's a renunciation, not just renunciation, activity. There are certain activities a brahmachari performs, and one of them is renunciation. There's an activity of a grahastha, he has a certain element of renunciation to it. I'll give you an extreme example, of course, extreme. For Yudhishthira Maharaj to be placed in his comfortable position, in his proper position in this material world, is to rule the entire world. Where is renunciation there? There is renunciation. And Krishna facilitated it. Krishna went out of his way to make sure Yudhishthira Maharaj becomes the king of not just a little province, but the entire world, the entire known world. Yudhishthira Maharaj made the king, and Krishna fought hard to achieve that. It's not like Krishna didn't say, Yudhishthira, you should be renounced. What are you doing? You should be renounced. Like Arjuna said, I want to be renounced, I just want to go to the forest. And Krishna called him a fool. So renunciation, it's not internal, external, modern jargon. It means suitable renunciation. And of course, with the suitable renunciation means people will also have the buddhaya, the right knowledge. They would know, Yudhishthira Maharaj knows, even though I'm the king of this whole world, not just India. Yudhishthira Maharaj is the king of the whole world. Emperor. Thank you. It was emperor. But he knew, he had the right understanding. But he didn't act like a sannyasi living in a forest. He lived in the kingdom with all the opulences. But he had the right understanding. He knew this is temporary. This can be taken off any time. Or this is, he got all this because of Krishna's compassion and his purva karma. Any activity he performs, it's performed prakriti kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasya hankara vimuratma kartaham iti manyate. He knew those things. And he's performing it properly as a yukta vairagya. At the same time, Dhritarashtra was criticized. He was called a dog, eating the leftover food thrown by Bhima. And he said, Vidura said, you should take sannyas. Get out immediately. Don't even waste a moment. Get out immediately. And see, it's not about internally I'm practicing something and externally I'm practicing something. No, internal and external are the same. Internal is the right understanding, and externally you act according to the right understanding. They're never out of sync. If they're out of sync, you're an illusion or you're cheating yourself or others. So, yeah, I think I made my point here. Any other questions, comments? Thanks for tolerating. Yeah. Even before you go, I don't know what they are. I have no idea. I know Pratyaksha, Anuman. I know Pratyaksha, Anuman, and Shabda. These are the three things I know. I don't know the breakdown of. No, don't know. I know what Adokshuja means, again, just by going by the word, beyond material senses, but I don't know Paroksha, I just don't, sorry. Some Sanskrit scholars can tell. Sorry.
Just to first about the problem, the Prabhupada is pointing to solution to economic problems lies in Sadhusanga association with devotees. So is Prabhupada more referring to the financial aspect or general
I kind of covered in that point, but not addressing directly, but I covered it. So what here the first sentence is, it is sometimes misunderstood that when somebody takes up devotional service, it means they have to give up their whatever they're doing, and then they're just only associating with the sadhus, and then they go bankrupt. Prabhupada says that's not the case. It's again the suitability, again going back, according to the suitability of an individual circumstances, an individual in their individual circumstances, act accordingly. A grahastha, what it means is a grahastha can't give up his wife and child and start chasing sannyasis as their full-time job. He has a responsibility to feed the children, to look after the wife. So the idea that, oh, I've taken devotional service, so I'm going to ignore my wife and children, and I'm just going to go and spend time with my Guru Maharaj, that's the Prabhupada's calling out. That's not the right thing. Again, suitable according to your circumstances. A brahmachari can do that. A brahmachari can do because he doesn't have an economic need. All he needs is rice dal sabji and 2 pairs of dhoti and a chadar. Like when I was traveling with my spiritual master, I had 2 dhotis and 2 chadars, not even a shirt. And just a chadar. I used to travel all over India. There's no economics there. And I didn't have any money. Not a cent on me. Whatever my spiritual master eats, whatever left over, I would eat. And he used to eat like very austere food. And I was like, oh boy, oh God. I was young, I was in late teens and early 20s, and I had a really big appetite. But that's all, it is what it is. A suitable renunciation. But a married person can't do that. He may do it for a day or two, but he has to go back to work. So my stomach is growling. I'm hungry. Speaking of food, yeah, they can't do that. So that's where Goswami's word yatharam, suitable, yukta vairagya, is important. If you remove that word yatharam, then it becomes chaotic. On the name of Yukta Vairagya, I can do any nonsense I want. Oh, it's all for Krishna Prabhu. No. Yeah, it's a proper. All right. It's already 9 o'clock. Granth Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Thago Premanande, Haribo, Vanchakalpatarvisha, Kripasandhivesha Pratinam, Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo.